My name is Gavin. I'm a third grader from Freeport, and I'm going to read The Fierce 44, Black Americans Who Shook Up the World, written by the staff of the Undefeated Portraits by Robert Ball. I'm reading about Frederick Douglass because his voice rose from slavery to challenge the denial of Black humanity. Frederick Douglass, a abolitionist, author, he lived till 1818 to 1895. Born on a Maryland farm in 1818, Frederick Douglass was the son of a slave mother, and a white father who may have been his owner. When Douglass was 8, he was sent to Baltimore to work for a ship carpenter. The carpenter's wife started to teach him to read, and Douglass recognized there was a connection between knowledge and freedom. At age 15, Douglass was sent to a different farm to work for a brutal man with a reputation as a slave breaker. Douglass hated the man and his time on the farm and tried to escape. Eventually, Douglass was sent back to Baltimore, where he worked as a slave in a shipyard. When he turned 20, he met a free Black woman who helped him escape. She bought him a train ticket to New York, and disguised as a sailor, he was on his way to freedom. Once he was in the North, Douglass started to talk to anti-slavery groups about his personal experience. He was a dynamic speaker who knew how to hold an audience. He was tall and graceful and had a voice that made you pay attention to what he had to say. Some people doubted that such a good speaker could be a slave. So in 1845, Douglass wrote an autobiography, narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, with all the details of his upbringing. A vivid portrayal of physical brutality, mental torture, and the separation of family members. The memoir brought the horrors of slavery into the light and became the most influential personal story of slavery in U.S. history. Besides fighting for abolition, Douglass was also an outspoken supporter for women's rights and continued to push for equality all of his life. And now I will be reading about Aretha Franklin, because the Queen of Soul deserves respect. Aretha Franklin, singer-songwriter, 1942 to 2018. In 1967, Aretha Franklin, the daughter of a popular Detroit Baptist minister, C.L. Franklin, scored a #1 hit with her remake of Otis Redding's Respect. The song became part of the soundtrack of the Civil Rights Movement, as well as an anthem for the women's movement, as women demand to be taken as seriously as men. But Franklin was bigger than one track. She started out as a teenager singing gospel music. Soon she branched out and over the years moved easily from jazz to rhythm, and blues to pop. At the Grammy Awards in 1998, she stepped in at the last minute for a sick opera star and dazzled the audience with her performance. But Franklin always brought her roots in gospel to her songs, which is why she was nicknamed the Queen of Soul. Franklin was a big supporter of the Civil Rights Movement, one time going on a tour with other artists to help raise money for the cause. She sang at the memorial service for Martin Luther King Jr., who was a friend of her father's. She also sang at the inauguration of the first Black president, Barack Obama. In 1987, Franklin became the first female performer inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Over her 6-decade career, she had more than 100 singles on the Billboard charts, and 17 of them were top 10 singles. She won 18 Grammys and sold more than 75 million albums. Franklin was a musician's musician. She could bang it out on the piano and sang opera as effortlessly as gospel. Few can match her 4-octave range or sustain a note or a song quite the way Franklin did. All hail the Queen. I'm going to be reading about Benjamin O. Davis Sr. because he led the fight against enemies both foreign and domestic. Benjamin O. Davis Sr. U.S. Army General, 1889 to 1970. Benjamin Oliver Davis Sr. began his military career in the Spanish-American War as a volunteer in the infantry. It is thought he may have even lied about his age so he can enlist without his parents' permission. He liked the discipline and order, so a few months after he was discharged, he re-enlisted and stayed in the military for the rest of his career. 4 decades later, as the United States prepared to enter World War II, Davis became the first African-American general in the Army. America's military was segregated for most of Davis's career. And black soldiers had limited options for promotion. His duty assignments were designed to avoid putting him in command of white troops or officers. Davis led troops in Liberia and the Philippines, where several of the famed all-black Buffalo Soldiers. He was assigned as a professor of military science and tactics at both Wilberforce University in Ohio and Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. He rose slowly through the ranks, becoming the first black colonel in the Army in 1930. In 1940, Davis was promoted to brigadier general by President Franklin D. Roosevelt during World War II. Davis held a special unit charged with safeguarding the status and moral of black soldiers in the Army, and he served in Europe as a special advisor on race relations. Davis retired in 1948 after 50 years of service. 6 days later, President Harry S. Truman ordered the end of discriminating practice in the armed forces. Davis's determined and disciplined rise in the Army paved the way for black men and women, including his son, Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., who in 1954 became the second African-American general in the U.S. military and the first in the Air Force.